I started my trip to Alaska by taking Amtrak's Lakeshore Limited from Boston to Chicago, then the Empire Builder from Chicago to Seattle. I saw a black fox trotting across a field at dawn in North Dakota, and there was fantastic scenery in Montana's Glacier National Park and Washington State's Cascade Mountains. A short trip on Amtrak's Thruway bus took me from Seattle to Vancouver, British Columbia. The city of Vancouver had a beautiful harbor bordered by mountains with lots of seaplane traffic. I allowed an extra day in case I missed the train connection, but everything went smoothly, so I had time to take an all-day tour of Victoria, the capital of British Columbia. That tour was very scenic and a lot of fun, with an excellent tour guide and a ferry trip from Vancouver to Vancouver Island. My Vancouver hotel was right on the pier where the cruise ship docked, so I could have the hotel staff just take my luggage directly from my room to the ship and then walk downstairs to board. I booked a package on Princess Cruises from Vancouver to Alaska that combined a 7-day cruise with 4 days on land at Denali National Park. Then I took a 7-day cruise on Holland America from Alaska back to Vancouver. After a day cruising through British Columbia's Inside Passage, my first port stop was Ketchikan, Alaska, where I took a wilderness tour on a small boat and then feasted on fresh-cooked crabs. A scenic bus ride took us from Ketchikan to George Inlet Lodge, where we boarded a boat that took us past Beaver Falls and up towards Bull Island. Then we went into Coon Cove for a lesson on catching lunch.
At its deepest, this is going to be up to 1,500 feet deep. Wow. Yeah, so that's not too bad, right? You only got about 1,000 feet to go.
Turn your head this way, Kay. I want to take you. She can't let go of that.
Getting heavier?
Yeah.
It gets heavier, getting closer. Only about maybe 800 now.
Oh.
Yeah, you're doing great. I can sit back here, hang out.
All right.
Wow.
Woo, yeah. Okay, Kay, turn around. That was work, okay.
All right. We're done. All right, you guys. So this is our crab ride here. All right, you guys. So I'll explain how this works here.
They have to be a certain size also.
Yes, they have to be 6.5 inches. We use this tool right here to measure them. Now, if they're under 6.5 inches, they can actually escape themselves out of one of these small circle openings on either side. So it's a requirement.
Then we headed back to the lodge for lunch. I never thought I would say no thanks when someone offered me more crab legs, but this truly was all you can eat, and I reached my limit. I even learned how to make Dungeness crab lollipops by carefully leaving a large chunk of body meat attached to a leg. For someone looking to take a vehicle on a ferry or just do some low-cost travel with overnight cabin accommodations and food service, check out the Alaska Marine Highway System. After Ketchikan, the next port stop was Juneau, the capital of Alaska. A main attraction at Juneau is the 13-mile-long Mendenhall Glacier, located about 12 miles outside the city. I took the shuttle bus that runs between the glacier and the cruise terminal and did a do-it-yourself tour. There's a very interesting visitor center and lots of varied paths and trails, including one to this waterfall. Sockeye salmon spawn in late summer in Steep Creek. I was surprised how little water the fish need to spawn. The Forest Service has boardwalks and platforms along the creek for watching the salmon and the black bears that come for a fish dinner. Luckily, there's fencing to prevent the bears from getting onto the elevated viewing platforms. After Juneau, the next port stop was Skagway. There was no question what I was going to do there. I took an all-day shore excursion to Carcross, Yukon Territory on the White Pass and Yukon Railroad. There's a link at the end of this video to my 6-minute video that's all about this train trip.
In the water you see down there over your left-hand shoulder is the Skagway Harbor. So everybody smile and wave. Down there is Skagway.
After the train, we took a 52-mile, very scenic bus ride from the Yukon Territory back to the ship in Skagway. This is Emerald Lake outside Carcross, The intense green color comes from mineral deposits at the bottom of the lake called marl. James Michener's book titled Alaska is an excellent read before a trip to Alaska. That book includes an entertaining section about the Chilkoot Trail that was followed by Klondike gold seekers in the late 1800s. This shore excursion paralleled that route. After Skagway, there was a day of scenic cruising in Glacier Bay National Park. Park rangers boarded our ship at sea and provided commentary during the day. At the end of the tour, it was exciting to watch them hop off our ship onto their boat, all while both were underway. After the day in Glacier Bay, we spent the next day crossing the Gulf of Alaska to our final port in Whittier. One of the activities on this sea day was a galley tour, which I really enjoyed. I was glad to see that lots of the food was fresh cut and prepared each day right in the ship's galley. I really hope cruise lines won't try to increase their profits by cutting back on the quality and freshness of the food. If that happens, it'll be pretty obvious in the dining room. The galley workers take a lot of pride in their work, as you can see from these fruit and vegetable creations, not to mention their excellent meals. When the ship docked in Whittier, Alaska, the cruise line provided a dedicated train direct to their North Denali Lodge to start the land portion of their package. The next day was a tour into the back country of the park. The highlight was when the bus driver stopped for a wolf that came down a hill and trotted in front of the bus. It was incredible to see a wolf that close in the wild. The next day a bus took us from the North Lodge to the South Lodge, where there were incredible views of Denali, formerly known as Mount McKinley, the highest mountain in North America. When one of my scheduled excursions was canceled, I took a bus to Talkeetna and did a do-it-yourself tour. I visited the ranger station where all Denali climbers have to register, and a surprisingly good nearby museum run by the Talkeetna Historical Society. The next morning was beautiful again, with the sun hitting the side of Denali. I went on an excursion with a naturalist and 6 other passengers in a small van to several interesting local sites. This was my last day at Denali, and I was told it was rare to have several clear sunny days in a row. I was very fortunate. That afternoon, the Princess Cruises Sea and Land Tour ended with a bus ride from their South Denali Lodge to a hotel in Anchorage. The next morning, I had to be at the Anchorage train station at 6 a.m. to catch an Alaska Railways train to Seward, where that afternoon I would board my 7-day Holland America cruise back to Vancouver. That train route had great scenery, especially of river gorges, mountains, and wildlife. It was really nice that I could just put a Holland America luggage tag on my bag at the station in Anchorage and then not touch it again until it showed up inside my cabin on the ship in Seward. The first port stop on my southbound Holland America cruise was Haines, Alaska. Haines has a beautiful setting and is much less touristy than nearby Skagway. The white buildings in the background are part of Fort Seward that was established in 1904 to keep an eye on the Canadian border and to police miners searching for gold. The fort was decommissioned in 1946, and now the buildings are mixed use, including some museums. The highlight of my stop in Haines was a tour of the Crochelle Wildlife Center. The animals there are mainly orphans that are indigenous to Canada and Alaska. They live in natural settings, and scenes for movies and television shows are sometimes filmed there. Steve Crochelle provided a fascinating tour, and I think this is a don't-miss shore excursion for cruise ships stopping in Haines or Skagway. It's on a par with the White Pass and Yukon Railway. Steve also filmed many of the avalanche scenes in Disney and National Geographic movies. Do the web searches on the screen for some incredible stories. Next, I stopped in Juneau again, and this time I walked around the port area. I didn't take the Mount Roberts tramway because I'm not a big fan of cable cars, especially with precarious-looking terminals perched at the top. Despite being the capital of Alaska, you can only get to Juneau by boat or airplane, no roads or trains. There were Dall sheep hanging out on the mountains surrounding Juneau. My next stop was Ketchikan. Doing a round-trip cruise was nice because I got a second day in some of the ports or a whole new port. This time in Ketchikan I went to Totem Bight State Park. Here I learned a lot about the history of native cultures in the Pacific Northwest, including the meanings of totem poles and the naming of clans after wildlife. Most of southern coastal Alaska is in the Tongass National Forest, the largest national forest in the United States and the largest remaining temperate rainforest in the world. I saw nurse stumps at Totem Bight State Park. A seed falls from the forest canopy onto a rotting tree stump and a new tree starts to grow, sending its roots down into the stump. Over the course of many years, the stump completely rots away and the new tree's upper roots are fully exposed in the air, an amazing sight. The final southbound port was Vancouver, where my round-trip cruise originally started. I took a bus to Seattle, where I spent a week visiting family and taking a 5-day Rhodes Scholar Signature Cities tour. The Chihuly Garden and Glass exhibit at the Space Needle displayed the blown glass artwork of Dale Chihuly. A Union Lake boat cruise included great views of the houseboats along the shore, including the one featured in the movie Sleepless in Seattle. A guided tour of the Boeing aircraft factory in Everett, just outside of Seattle, was fascinating. Looking out through observation windows above the factory floor, I could watch workers assembling huge airplanes. Then, all aboard Amtrak for the scenic trip back to Boston and home in New Hampshire.